about God is a metaphor. We just have no direct, full, complete knowledge of God. And in fact, we don't have that kind of knowledge of ourselves or of each other. For perhaps you feel a little affronted if somebody says to you, I can read you like a book. Maybe not. We don't want to be all that easily understood, really, because we don't understand ourselves all that well. And we have occasion to say, well, I don't know what I think about that. I don't know how I feel about that. Or, we have those times of uneasiness and uncertainty, and so we are mysteries to ourselves, and we come to cherish that, actually. And we don't even know those to whom we are most closely related, completely or fully. And we cherish that mystery. And definitely the same is true of God. And so we accept that God is, no matter what we say, it's always partial, always mysterious, and we just need to accept that. And so how do we know God, and particularly how do we know God in Jesus Christ? Well, we have the letters that Paul and others wrote, starting around the middle of the first century. We have three very similar Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, who use a lot of the same material, one to the other, and they essentially tell stories. They tell the story of Jesus, an incident from Jesus' life, and they retell the stories that Jesus told, the parables and those kinds of stories. And we cherish those stories, and those are most often the Gospels that we read on any given Sunday in the church. And so that's how we know Jesus, and that's how we know God through Jesus. And then we come to the fourth Gospel, which was written a generation later than the Synoptic Gospels. So this Gospel writer had those previous writings, the letters and the Synoptic Gospels, to work from. He also was clearly very well educated. Knew Greek philosophy, knew the poetry of Greek, and brings all of that in this synthesis of the fourth Gospel that we've read the beginning of that today. And it's philosophic, it's poetic, there's a wonderful cadence to it as we hear it. We can be swept into this passage that begins, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So we can be just swept into the music of it. But somehow we'll want to know, okay, what's the answer? Who was Jesus? Who was the Word? And this writer will never fully answer that question, but gives us the dynamic, gives us the poetry. And we revisit it every year on the Sunday after Christmas. Not because it answers questions, but because it opens our heart. And so that's where we are today. And this writer takes us right back to the very beginning of all things in the Hebrew tradition. For right away, we are at the beginning of Genesis, and the Spirit of God hovers over the deep, the chaos of pre-existence, and all we know is that God says, let there be light. And there was, and God saw that it was good, and follows the same pattern for the next 5 days. So brings all things into being by pronouncing a word. And this writer is saying to us, remember that? That word That's what became incarnate in Jesus Christ. God embodied. And to be embodied in human terms means to be male or female, and in a culture where the value is in maleness, okay, he has a son. But ladies, we have to remember, the Word was pre-human, neither male nor female. In other words, we're part of this picture. We're part of that creative image of God. And so, despite the emphasis on being a son, well, okay, the writer had to make a choice, and we understand that. But we are in this passage. So, John is saying that creative word, that is what's incarnate in a human being, and we know him as Jesus. We'll never know everything, for Jesus is no more transparent than any one of us. There is always mystery about Jesus, as with any human being, and even greater mystery about God. But this is a lens through which we may see. For Jesus is the light of the world, says John, the gospel writer. And that is also said right in this passage. For he is light and life. And the light is never put out. The light is eternal. And so we are caught in that imagery, that poetry, that mystery, and we just sit with it, cherish it, and know that we are drawn into it by virtue of our baptism, marked as Christ's own forever. So that this gospel writer says, you're reading this gospel, you're called by Jesus Christ, you yourselves are the light of Christ in the world. You have a mission, however you are called to live that out. And so here on what we knew would be a low Sunday, after all, that the space was full of people on Christmas Eve. God rest them this morning as well. But you've been called here because God and God in Christ are irresistible. And so you've come to hear the message again. You've come to sit and be bathed in the poetry of the fourth gospel. You've come to be fed at this table and equipped to go forth, always carrying that light of Christ. For we have been told that the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a father's only son, or daughter, as the case may be, full of grace and truth. It is a great calling. It is a great calling to be part of this picture, part of this creation, part of this redemption, part of this new identity that is given to humankind through the incarnate Word, Jesus Christ. So, Merry Christmas. Yeah. We have 12 days of Christmas. Really, we do. So bathe in this light and this new identity and carry it into the world. Amen.
Amen.